Good morning and welcome to this week's
recording in progress.
Welcome to this week's Board of Commissioners for Weber County. It's Tuesday, the 20th of August. We have Commissioner Bolos seated to my right, Commissioner Gage seated to my left. I'm Commissioner Harvey. We welcome those of you who are in the audience today and those of you who have joined us online, those of you who may join us another time. Our Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by one of our principal planners, Charlie Ewert, our invocation by Mr. Jim Ritalik, and then I'll give the thought of the day.
Please rise, repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Horn, will you pitch hit for Mr. Ritalik?
Yes, sir.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee at this time and give you thanks for this day. We're grateful for the favorable circumstances in which we have to meet. We're grateful for this state that we live in, for this county that we get to live in and work in. We're thankful for all of the blessings that we enjoy. We ask thee to watch over and bless this commission this day with thy Spirit. Help to guide them in decisions that are being made. We also ask thee to bless this community, this county. We ask thee to watch over and bless those who are serving in the military forces, as well as those who represent emergency care and so forth. We again give you thanks for all that we have, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Appreciate you. You know, a lot of things going on in my mind today with regards to thoughts. Some of us got to enjoy a absolutely beautiful light show last night in the form of a thunderstorm and lightning show down here. It was absolutely incredible, and many pictures have surfaced today on social media. One of the better ones I've seen in my life. It was just really good. I hope that for all of us, and I need to look in the mirror and say this directly, but we take time to take care of ourselves and not wait. If you have an impression, I would hope that you'd follow up on that. When you drive down the road, sometimes if you're thinking of something, pick up the phone and give somebody a call and act on an impression. You know, my father-in-law, years ago, before he was my father-in-law, told me to act on an impression and told me a poem that I'm going to recite to you today that has to do with acting on impressions or not acting on impressions. And it goes, the poem goes like this. Now, I don't know who the author is, but I think you'll enjoy it. The bride. Now, Miss Russell, I need you to pay attention on this one. This is very important. The bride, white of hair, stooped over her cane. Her footsteps, uncertain, need guiding, while down the opposite church aisle, with his one toothless grin, the bridegroom in wheelchair came riding. Well, who is this elderly couple thus wed? Well, you'll find when you closely explored it that here is that rare, most conservative pair who waited till they could afford it. When you have an impression, you know it's right, things just seem to work out. Move forward, and whether that's, like I say, making telephone calls or just being thoughtful with someone, because you never know, and all of us in this room, if you haven't already, one day we'll get a call that changes your life. And you'll be glad that you follow those impressions that you get. And that's my thought.
Great thought.
Great.
Okay, we're going to move on to our agenda-related public comments. For those of you in the audience that have comments pertaining to the agenda, we ask that you keep those comments to 3 minutes, and we'd love to hear from you now. Are there any in the audience? Please, ma'am. State your name and where you're from, please.
Yes, Kaya Forrester. We live in Roy.
Ms.
Currently.
Forrester, go ahead.
Thank you. So my husband and I are homeowners in the Winston Park subdivision. Well, our home's being built and will be finished in the fall. And we live next to the Batemans, who spoke to you last week. And I did attend the meeting last week, but there wasn't any way, like online, but there wasn't any way for me to make comments. So I wasn't able to share my thoughts last week. So we have been in communications with the developer, and when we first bought our land, it was under the assumption that everything had been planned so far with the development behind our lot. That's up for the rezoning, and we were kind of disappointed and just felt kind of blindsided that the plans were still in the works, and we just didn't understand that at the time. And so when we learned about, the patio home development, we were just disappointed. But we brought our concerns to the developer and spoke with Wade, who's here, and they've just been very generous in addressing our concerns and willing to work with us. And that if the rezoning is approved, they've offered just to help us with the fence and maybe a couple of privacy trees, because privacy and safety for our 5 kids was the main concern. And I mean, we would absolutely rather have the developed homes behind us instead of like an undeveloped, like dirt and gravel. Because from my understanding from the meeting last week, it would stay that way for at least a year, unless something was proposed after that. Just because it would attract weeds and pests and would make maintaining our area more difficult. And they also addressed potential parking concerns we had, because there are alleyways that back up to our lot. We were concerned that people would just use that easement space for parking, but they offered to put up concrete barriers just to ensure that, nobody would back into our fence or whatnot. So they have been very understanding and generous in communicating with us. And our only lasting concern is just the detention basin, because our property borders both of those things, the development, proposed development, and the detention basin. But from our understanding, it's going to be left as is, again, just as weeds. And it's not just about aesthetics, but just functionality. And in that, it would only be mowed a couple of times a year just to keep the weeds low, but that doesn't control the weeds. But from our understanding, they would have to be able to apply for water rights for that area, and I'm not sure what can be done by the commission or by the developer to make that possible. But those are our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forrester. Appreciate your comments, you and Josh both, and your notes were recorded from a previous conversation. We have them. So I just wanted you to know that we've been rather efficient in making sure that your needs are heard. We appreciate you coming forward today. I don't know what's going on with our online, because I don't know. Do we have anybody online, Christy, that wants to make a comment?
No, usually they raise a hand.
Okay.
Or they just come out, they're taking something.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate that. We'll now move to item F on our agenda, which is the consent items. Item number 1 is a request for approval of warrants 102-777 through and including 102-816 and 485-999 through and including 486, 123, and 377 through 379 in the amount of $1,620,170.62. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $242,586.01. And item 3 is that summary of warrants and purchase orders. Mr. Ricky Hatch, would you give us some more detail on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We issued 13 purchase orders this week for a total amount of $243,000. large items. 26% of that amount, or $62,000 was for the dispatch to pay for an update of all MCUs. 24%, or $58,000, is for the health department to purchase vaccines. 23%, or $55,000, is for the IT department to purchase network software. 14%, or $34,000, is for our paramedic for a custom build for a paramedic box, and 5%, or $12,000, is for the transfer station for e-waste removal and fuel. As far as warrants, we issued 158 checks this week for $1.6 million. 49% of that amount, or $790,000, was road construction for 5500 West in Hooper, and that's paid for with sales tax, transportation tax funds. 11%, or $175,000, is for the jail, and that went towards 5 HVAC rooftop units, as well as a generator and culinary for the inmates. 7%, or $117,000, is for the elections department, and that is printing and postage for the upcoming general election. And then we haven't done this in the past, but our top 5 highest paid vendors for this particular week was Hooper City, which was the transportation funds reimbursement, $787,000. K&H printers and lithographers, and they are the ones who are printing and mailing our ballots, for $117,000. The state of Utah, $61,000. Rocky Mountain Power, $53,000, and UEAC, which is the air conditioning and heating company for the jail, $50,000.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Commissioners Bolos or Farrar, any questions for Mr. Hatch regarding any of those?
None.
No.
Hearing none, we'll continue to move on with item 4, which is a request for approval of the new business licenses. Item 5, a request for approval of the minutes for the meeting held on August 13th, 2024. Item 6 is a request for approval to grant a 30-foot access and utility easement to Plain City on parcel 19, 27, and 20. Item 7 is a request for approval of the right-of-way contract signed between Weber County and Carrie and Cheryl Snyder for the purchase of parcel 15, 88, and 49, and parcel 15, 88, and 23. Item 8 is a request for approval of a contract by between Weber County and Weber State University for the men's ice hockey game and practice ice agreement for the 2024-2025 season. Item 9 is a request for approval of amendment to a contract by between Weber County and Zions Public Finance, Inc. to add some additional items updating the impact fee, facility plan, and impact fee analysis pertaining to the sewer, roads, and storm drain. Item 10 is a request for approval of a contract by between Weber County and Intermountain Health to house pets of IHC patients for up to 10 days at the Weber Animal Services. Item 11 is a request for approval of basic training agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Michael Clegg, Darren Cuevas, Jonathan Heath, Cameron Richens, Dakota Cole, Natalie Court, Tanner Jackson, Joseph Poale, and Austin Rainford. Commissioners, any questions regarding any of the items appearing on our consent calendar or F on our agenda?
None for me.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve consent items F1 through 11.
Second.
A motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our agenda now, it's item G. G1 is a request for approval of the final reading of an ordinance of the Weber County Commissioners, Weber County governing background checks for all applicants and for applicants, not all, for applicants for county employment and volunteers. Ms. Wild, anything that you gave us a presentation a week or two ago? This is the second reading, is it not?
Correct. This is the second reading of the ordinance to allow the HR department to run background checks on applicants and volunteers for certain positions within the county. So same thing as last week.
Commissioners, we've had time to review and hear more. Any questions for Ms. Wild? Upon hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the final reading of the ordinance governing background checks for applicants for county employment and volunteers.
I would second that.
Great. Mr. Brandt?
Roll call vote for ordinance 2024-16. Commissioner Farrar?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Item 2 is a request for approval. Thank you, Ms. Wild. Item 2 is a request for approval of a final reading of an ordinance. The Weber County Commissioners of Weber County amending certain fees to the Weber County Culture, Parks, and Recreation Department. We've talked about those fees recently, and here's another presentation by our Culture, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Todd Ferrario. Mr. Ferrario, go ahead, please.
No real updates. This is a second reading. I just would like to make sure you're very aware that Culture, Parks, and Rec as a whole is a singular fee ordinance, and this pertains specifically to the ice sheet on this go-around. The majority of these costs are obviously from increased costs for us in operations, and that's a bit of a pass-through.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Ferrario?
None for me.
I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve 2024-17 as presented by Mr. Ferrario this morning, which is an ordinance of the Weber County Commissioners amending certain fees for Weber County Culture, Parks, and Rec.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's a roll call.
Roll call, sorry. Thank you, Craig. It's 2024-17, isn't it?
It is.
Correct. Roll call vote for ordinance 2024-17. Commissioner Ford?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3, here we go, is a request for approval of a development agreement by and between Weber County and Winston Park Development. Mr. Charlie Ewert.
Commissioners, I think you have all the information. We've been on your agenda for a couple of different times, and eager to answer any questions if you have any. Short and simple.
This development agreement, one of the things that I had asked, and one of the things that are on some notes of mine, especially that were mentioned by a couple of the presenters, is that they would be grass on the detention pond.
That's not specifically listed in the development agreement, but we can make sure it is.
And that they would be fence and trees on property lines, which sounds like they've satisfied the Batemans and the foresters on there.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some private arrangements between the developer and some of the lot owners. As far as the street right-of-way goes, we'll have a wall running along the street right-of-way with street trees along that street right-of-way.
Okay, that's
What do
great.
you mean? What do you mean by a wall of trees?
So there'll be not concrete. It'll be masonry wall
Okay.
along 1800 South with street trees along that. So some beautification.
What about the street that comes off of there's a pathway that they'd thought about a pathway, but I'd asked for a street.
At the end of Shell Grove
Lot
Drive.
108.
Yeah. So that still isn't something that the developer is interested in doing. It sounds like the Lot 108 owner isn't interested in selling, but they're still happy to do a pathway, and that is written in the development agreement. That's
Sure it is. My concern about that, again, just to voice it publicly, is this was a cluster subdivision some time ago, then it was sold to all the people in the subdivision when they did their disclosures that sometime that the property behind them could be developed, which kind of, for me, I was misled in the original agreement. So that's why I think it's important that that street go through. But I'll entertain comments from Commissioner Bolos or Commissioner Frohr at this time.
Question, if I might, Mr.
Please.
Chair.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, I've read a number of printouts, talked to a few people. Would you say the general impression of the existing residents favor this or do not favor this? Do you have a feel for that?
I can't say whether favor or disfavor is a term that would be used. My understanding from the different information that we've been received is they're aware and they're not fighting it.
Okay. So another question, and this goes back to the ordinance that was in place at the time that the first phase went through, which was the cluster subdivision. And obviously, I've always had, the past number of years, had some concerns about allowing development and taking what I would call a land credit for the cluster, and then coming back at some point in time and developing it. In today's, and the world's changed quite a bit since that ordinance was in place, and I understand that housing's a big issue anymore. But really, to me, the question is, what does the community, what's the benefit to the community and or the residents, or both, for allowing that to come out of open space And again, I say open space. I don't believe there's any water tied to that property, is there?
To my understanding, there's not.
So, from a realistic standpoint, is it better to have homes there or what I'm going to call a patch of dirt that then has to be maintained by somebody, but probably not maintained by anybody if you look at the reality of it.
Yeah.
So what's the overall benefit to the community, the public, that they would look at this and say, okay, this is probably a fair deal for us?
Yeah, great questions. Questions that the Planning Commission struggled with as they were looking at this as well. So number one, the Planning Commissioners said, that without water and without a willing farmer, you're not going to get a whole lot of farm product out of that open space. That original cluster subdivision ordinance was intended to create viable farm acreage. So the Planning Commission doesn't see that as viable farm acreage anymore. Technically, it wasn't a cluster, it was a PRUD, but they did follow the same cluster subdivision rules, so the expectation was still there. And so part of the general plan dialogue with the public and with the Planning Commission and with you guys was that maybe the cluster subdivision ordinance that favors agricultural uses, maybe that's not a favorable tool to use in the developing parts of western Weber County, primarily because agricultural parcels, if you can make the dirt produce ag, just doesn't fit within residential subdivisions. There's just too many conflicts. And in order to make ag productive and financially feasible, there's just a lot of different treatments and machinery and all the kinds of stuff that just doesn't work with backyards or front yards right next door. So that was one of the leading considerations that the Planning Commission gave on this. As far as getting the density credits or the bonus densities, those density credits, they did happen under the A1 zone allowing essentially one dwelling unit per acre. But if the subdivision is changed to the R115 zone, which is about 3 dwelling units to the acre, they're actually not receiving any credits at all. So a little bit of a shift in rules, going from A1 to what could be R115 if you guys make the decision today. And so, in other words, under the new rules, there is no credit. And so the benefit of keeping open spaces for what might be credit may not be relevant anymore. However, in order to try and make good on the fact that that open space that the community could enjoy just by the sheer nature of it not developing, the developer has agreed to flip that into a $7,500 per new residential lot donation to the park district so that they can put more money into the park that's just down the road from this property. The other thing that the developer has done is worked closely with our department and with the Planning Commission on providing street connections. If you could see their first proposal to develop that open space area, there wasn't a lot of great street connections, especially not a lot of connections between that parcel and the existing Winston Park, the developed portion of Winston Park subdivision. The developer actually went back and sounds like they repurchased lots or they withdrew from contracts to purchase lots in order to provide street connections between phase 1 and phase 2, as well as additional street connections to the exterior subdivision boundary and to 1800 South. And they're amenable to the idea of putting in a pathway easement going to the west to connect this to the development that may occur west of the property, which that would essentially create a pathway straight through Winston Park all the way to the new park on the west side of the neighboring property. So a few different things that went into providing public benefit. If this community is going to be essentially a neighborhood, I think each of those things are really valuable for the community to have, and without these voluntary donations or these voluntary provisions in exchange for the rezone, the community wouldn't get those things.
Great. Now, you said amenable. Is that going to be part of the development agreement with the pathway?
Trail connection, yep. It's written into the development agreement. In other words, nothing is good unless that pathway easement is in place.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Mr. Bullos?
Yes, thanks, Charlie. I received an email and I closed it out after I pulled up these documents, but it's either from you or from the developer with those signed documents. I don't even know what it's called. It's an acknowledgement maybe.
Yeah.
of the changes. I know that the Planning Commission went through a public hearing to change the general plan.
They did.
I believe there were no comments made at the time.
I don't recall. I don't recall what comments were made at the time with the Planning Commission.
So my big ask is I need to feel confident that the homeowners or lot owners who went into this thinking that there was something happening would be okay with something different happening. And so I requested these letters, and I appreciate you working on those, and you and Wade as well. There is one that's not signed. I'm not sure why. I don't know if you can speak to that, Mr. Rumsey, but.
Yeah, I just spoke with Mr. Rumsey, and I'll
Okay.
let him actually, if you're comfortable with it,
Yeah.
speak directly to that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks, Commissioner Bolus. The one that I
Just
think.
state your name and where you're from, please.
Okay, Wade Rumsey. I'm from Idaho Falls.
Thank you.
The one I think you're referring to is just to secure the pedestrian pathway. I think that was the one that,
Oh,
and that's with the lot owner. And we've been in several discussions with them, and they're good. I can get that signature. That's not a problem.
okay, my support will be contingent on getting that signature. Also, I just want to speak to a couple of things that Ms. Forrester talked about. There are some things that are addressed in the development agreement. There are some things that are not. So, and Charlie, maybe this is a question for you. How can I be assured that those things happen? That there's a landscape credit for trees, that there's a fence that's installed? How can we ensure that?
So, I mean, to get a guarantee, we can get that into the development agreement if you'd like. We can make some adjustments to get those things in there. Aside from that, there are no guarantees. It's a word-of-mouth promise from the developer. We do have it on the record. And so if you want to make your approval of the rezone contingent on that, we could try and work to get that into the development agreement.
And it would be likely governed by rules of contract. And so if there's a breach to that, there are legal remedies.
I just want to say that we will follow through. I'm happy to put myself on record that those people that we met with, we will follow through. I think we have a pretty good track record with Phase 1, working with planning and engineering and things like that, that if you take a look at what we've done there and the commitments we've made, we've followed through. I have no problem saying that we'll follow through on those that we met. I think the people that we met, we had good discussions with them. I thought it was a worthy thing to do. I feel like we gone above and beyond to try to make sure that they're fully aware and that their concerns were addressed on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that what's required is a public hearing, and I ask that they go above and beyond to get that. At the same time, that puts a little more responsibility on you for grass on the retention pond, which I know was not part of the original plan. But for these homeowners who bought into something different, it's important to me that that's grassed and maintained the way that the other open space is in the subdivision. The barriers that were talked about, and the trees and the fence, those are the things that I need.
The pathway.
And the pathway.
With the pathways, there's one that leads out to 1800 South. There's another one that leads out to the east.
Right. Oh.
There's just a little
Okay,
bit.
yeah.
I don't know if I have a.
No, I've seen it.
Okay. And then the one to the west.
To the west.
That would connect. And then we actually have another one that's was a part of the original one. It was a gravel road. It was a 20-foot pathway from there to the Phase 2 as well. So I feel like there's excellent pedestrian pathway throughout the inner subdivision as well as the ones that would stub out to the east and to the west.
Those are my asks. And this, yeah, the signature on the pathway, those have to be in place for my support.
Any other questions, commissioners?
None for me, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion motion to approve the development agreement for the Winston Park development as presented by Mr. Ewert with the stipulations as follows. The pathways, as discussed this morning, will be put in the development agreement. The landscaping, the grass, the trees that have been discussed this morning will also be put in there. And anything that I've missed, I'm going to allow that to be amended if I have missed anything. But those would have to be, in my mind, part of that development agreement with this motion. That's my motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Any comment or?
No, but I have a comment for Mr. Ewer after the vote.
Okay, well, put that motion to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Charlie, I talked to you about this briefly after the first time this came to our planning commission meeting, and the reason why we're addressing this now is a park district issue to me. The original approval happened before my time, but I would really like the park district to have a conversation with the planning commission so there's an understanding of what the park district is looking for. If the park district had taken this piece like the intention was, we wouldn't be having this conversation. There would be a park. And we've gone through the required public hearings to change the general plan. We've gone beyond that to make the original buyers into the subdivision comfortable with the change in the general plan. But it just really makes it difficult to go back and change something. I mean, I've made it difficult on you. I know I have.
Not at all.
But
I'm happy to be here.
But it's important, I think, to just have a better vision going forward, and I would appreciate them having that conversation and have the park district explain exactly what they're looking for so that we aren't doing this again in the future.
Great comments. Thank you. Okay, that passes. Well, I'll move on to item number 4. It's a request for approval of a rezone ordinance rezoning approximately 40 acres of land otherwise known as the Winston Park subdivision, located at approximately 3667 West, 1800 South, from the A1 agricultural zone to the R115 residential zone. Mr. Ewert, any questions? Or presentation you want to make?
Not at all, except for a brief comment about parks. I think we recognize, as well as the Park District recognizes, that there's been challenging coordination in the past. Just so you guys know, we do have a inter-park district coordination meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We're going to be working with both Taylor West Weber and with Warren West Warren to try and really kind of get a handle on how each of these developments are being imposing on parks, what exactly the parks want, and putting together a good parks master plan. The other good news that I could report is that the Taylor West Weber Park District now has a park master plan they adopted about a year ago. So a lot easier to understand what it is that they're hoping for. So,
Thank you.
other than that, I'll take questions if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Ewert?
Comment if I could, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I would appreciate seeing that master plan from the Parks District. I mean, they have been working, very hard over the last couple of years in locating sites for parks, and I think they've accomplished a good portion of that. Again, I think we need to look at where those parks are, whether they have water or not, and really moving forward how that ties in with our general plan. And again, I support Commissioner Bolos' comment that really needs to be coordinated between the Planning Commission and the Park District whenever they have a subdivision that could be impacted by this. I think it's just good information to have.
Great. I'll send it on to you. I can email that later
Anyway,
today.
that's my comment.
Thank you. With that, either one of you, would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve Ordinance 2024-18.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 2024-18 ordinance. Mr. Brandt, roll call.
Roll call vote for ordinance 2024-18. Commissioner Floor?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Item number 5 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Asphalt Construction in the excavation and the installation of a pathway along the south side of 4000 North. Mr. Chad Meyerhofer. Mr. Meyerhofer, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Commissioners. Yeah, what you have before you is a contract with Asphalt Construction Excavating Company, looking at extend the pathway there on 4000 North from the far west boundary west, about 1,600 feet, about 3 3000 west where the western drain crosses. This is just a little bit more extension of that pathway, hoping to eventually get down to the trailhead for the rail trail parking lot. So any questions that you have, hopefully I can answer.
This presentation was made during a work session or another time here. Thank you, Mr. Meyerhofer. Questions, Commissioner Bolos or Farrar for Mr. Meyerhofer on this pathway?
Just a clarification, if I might.
Go ahead.
So this takes it from our new drain east to the trail, is that correct? Or?
No, this is not going to be with that new, where we put in the new box culvert. That's further west from here.
So where does this start?
So the western drain comes along the south side of the road through this area, and then it crosses to the north side of the road, goes down to where that new box culvert was put in, and crosses back to the south. So all of this is just right there, the first where far west boundary starts. Through the, if you're familiar with the Bayview Ranchettes. So
okay, so does this start at the far west border?
Correct, far west border, and just goes west about 1,600 feet.
All right, so this starts from the east, not the west.
Yep, that's
okay.
correct.
Makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Great. Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve the contract by and between Weber County and Asphalt Construction and Excavating for the installation of a pathway along the south side of the 4000 North, presented by Mr. Meyerhofer this morning.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Vitalik, if you'd make your way up here. Item 6 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Abbott Law for indigent defense attorney civil commitments in Utah County.
Thank you, Commissioners. This matter is going to save Weber County about 2/3 on what we have been spending on civil commitments. And so we thought about offering that services or providing that services in-house. And after studying it, it was more economical to go this route.
Questions for Mr. Vitalik regarding Abbott Law for indigent defense?
None.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the contract by and between Weber County and Abbott Law as presented by Mr. Vitalik.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Vitalik, item 7 is a request for approval of an interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and Box Elder County for the provision of forensic social work services for justice-involved individual in Box Elder County as part of a 2-year pilot program funded by the state legislature. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Number 7 and 8 are both very similar. 7 governs Box Elder County and 8 Davis County. And this is part of the 2-year forensic social work program that we received funding from the legislature for. We now, it was supposed to start July 1st. We did not receive the signed contracts from the state legislature until August 1st. And so we now have these interlocal agreements in place. Davis County is already rolling. Box Elder County will be rolling soon in September. So we're very excited about this. We are bringing in we have 2 of the 3 forensic social workers that are part of the pilot program that are going to be coming in, as well as the mitigation administrative assistant that's part of the program.
Questions for Mr. Vitalik on either item number 7 or item number 8? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion for those separately, if you would, Commissioners.
I'd move to approve the interlocal by and between Weber County and Box Elder County for the provision of forensic social work and services for justice-involved individuals in the Box Elder County as part of the 2-year pilot program funded by the state legislature.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll place that for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now on to item 8. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and Davis County as presented by Mr. Vitalik.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Vitalik. Ashley, if you'll make your way up. Item 9 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Randy Merritt Construction to construct approximately 2,800 linear feet of 36-inch storm drain pipe along 2200 North in the Eden area. Go ahead, Mr.
Yes.
Tolman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is this agreement, a contract between Weber County and Randy Marriott Construction to furnish the pipe and install this storm drain system. We, in a previous work session, discussed this project with the Commissioners. We had put this out through Purchasing Department for public bids. We received 6 bids back, and these were over, the one with Randy Marriott for the total project is about $2 million. After our discussion with the Commissioners, we reduced the scope of the project down to about $1.2 million. And we've talked with the contractors to make sure they're okay with this reduced scope and that the prices that they bid are still agreeable to them, and they are okay with that. And so what we are proposing is doing this system in parts and just going up to the 1.2 threshold at this point.
That, with regards to the monies we have and everything else, this is a great way to do this, plus it gives it just some more attention up there to the valley. I hope that there are some that are paying close attention, because here are more funds that are going up to benefit those residents. And so
Absolutely, yeah.
I think to phase it is a smart way to do it. I wish that we had the funds to be able to do the whole thing, but we can't do it all. There's only so much in our wallet.
Correct.
So, any questions, Commissioners?
None.
Yeah, one question, if I might.
Please.
So, yeah, I understand the phasing. My question is, just to be clear on the public record, will that phase 1, as we call it, alleviate the situation with flooding through Eden Acres and some of that area? Or are we still going to have the same issue until phase 2 is completed?
This will not fix the Eden Acres issues. In the phase that we're proposing now, it makes it up to kind of the Carlos and Harley's area. The Valley Copy is where this first phase will get us to. And then the second phase that would make it up, or, however many phases it takes us, the end point is up at the Lindsay Ditch.
Got it.
Where we do see those flooding issues kind of.
All right, so if I know my geography, basically we're starting from the south and headed north. The next phase will be at that ending point and then going north up to the Lindsay Ditch.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's the end goal, is to make it to the Lindsay Ditch.
Okay. And have we had so will that solve some flooding problems we've had through that area, in that Eden area?
No, we really haven't seen flooding issues down there, but it's kind of working our way through with the hopes to get to some of the flooding issues. It will help provide a straw, so to speak, for like the fire station is looking at fixing an issue. So kind of they're going to do their part, where this will get it closer for them to tie into.
Got it.
So certainly it can help.
It will help, but the end game is to continue. The phase 2 is really what we're after in the final analysis.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that, Mr.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah. With that, then, I'll place that item number 9 as a request to have a motion.
I would move to approve the contract by and between Weber County and Randy Marriott Construction to construct approximately 2,800 linear feet of 36-inch storm drain pipe along 2200 north in the Eden area.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number H, Commissioners,
Yes.
please.
As you know, every month we have a meeting with the directors in the county, and we hear updates about their departments. And Mr. Vitalik mentioned this morning how impressed he was with what everyone was sharing and how much really goes on in the county that the public doesn't see. And then Mr. Wilkinson followed that up with a comment about the partnerships that we have among the departments, and I just want to reiterate that in a public setting. We do. We really do. There was a kind of a half-joking comment about maybe some poaching between departments.
What would you have?
But in the end,
you have good people all around.
everybody wants them.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're all on the same team, and I just really appreciated those comments from those two.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Mr. Farrar?
Just agree with that, absolutely. That's why we have the best employees in all of the 29 counties in the state of Utah.
Yep.
So we can be proud of that. We continue to show that on a daily basis.
And here we are leading again at what Mr. Vitalik did. We're taking care of our neighbors to the east in Morgan and our neighbors to the north. If we had neighbors to the west, we'd do a contract with the Great Salt Lake County. But the Great Salt Lake, not just Salt Lake County. I just want to make sure you, KAWER, did hear that. Great. Yeah, yeah, where I got it. All right, great. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion for item I.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.